Hello everyone and welcome back to another stream from Mind Talks NRL SuperCoach. In today's stream, we're going to be going through the center wing position analysis. Now, normally these positional analysis preview videos or streams that I do, or videos that I do every year, ordinarily I'll do as videos, but I thought maybe for the center wing analysis we'll change it up a little bit. Two main reasons. One, I love having to interact with you guys, through the questions and whatnot, and just kind of bounce everything off of each other. Still quite early in the preseason, so there's still a lot that we don't know yet, so it's still going to be hypothesizing. But the second reason I also enjoy doing the streams is I hate video editing, and recording the videos and then having to edit effectively doubles how long you're going to have to be spending on that particular piece of content. Whereas doing a live stream, I get it done, and obviously barring any massive mishaps or whatnot, then I don't need to edit it, and I can just pull the audio out and put it straight onto podcast. So it's a little bit easier for me as well. I thought there's a lot to get through, and I wasn't going to be able to be at home the next couple of days, so I thought, you know what, let's just do a live stream. So it's good to see, almost 30 of you in the chat already, which is great to see. Some people in the chat as well, and definitely guys as well. Like, obviously, I know people might not have questions about center wing, but the focus of today's stream is on the center wing. So if you specifically have questions on center wing, do encourage you to pop them in the chat, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. But it will go through the normal stuff that I do. If you haven't checked out already as well, I did a fullback position analysis video. Normally I start from hookers and work my way down, but I thought let's maybe do the opposite, or we'll see how I go. Just do it on vibes, because fullback and center wing are definitely much more exciting positions than your hookers and your front rowers and whatnot. They're a little bit more boring, but center wing, there's so many center wings to get through. So another caveat, if there's a center wing who's on the screen who isn't there, it's not necessarily just because I don't like them, or it's just there's only so many certain center wings that you can talk about. So try to cover off the main ones, but we'll obviously try to get through all your center wing questions. So it's good to see Lachlan Camilleri in the chat, Queenslander, Jason Yang, Aman, my idol. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. Mark Lawless, who's got a question already on Karaz or Iro. I do have an answer for that, which I will get to you, Mark, on that. Avatar of Paper Magic, so that's Benny G. Good evening from your number one fan. Absolutely, you're one of the best ones out there, Benny. Good to see you as well. Another question here from Kodim as well on Karaz and center wing. So looks like there's a lot to get our teeth stuck into. And of course, I think if you guys are tennis fans, the Australian Open quarterfinal is on today, 8:10. I know it's Alcaraz and the Aussie guy, what's his name? Is it Minor? I don't even know how you pronounce it. Minor? Minaur. I sound like an idiot not knowing how to pronounce his name. Anyway, that match is on at 8:10 p.m. So if you want to go and watch that, I'm not going to be upset at you at all. I'll try to also finish this and watch that at 8:15. So we'll try to get through everything. So let's get stuck in. But actually, before I do all that, just want to also give a quick plug as well. If you are enjoying the content, you're the first time watching a video or stream of mine, please do hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm on like 5,810 subscribers, so it'd be nice to get to 6,000 subscribers before the start of the season. So that's the new goal. Help me get to 6,000 subs by the start of the season, and I'll be forever indebted to all of you. But please do like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe. A lot of work does go behind the scenes to get these videos and slides done. And do follow me on Instagram, X. Trying to do more on Instagram and also on Patreon. So for example, Kale Iro Deep Dive, put that together yesterday and put that out exclusively on Patreon, but we will probably talk about him, of course, in detail. So the way I normally try to start these positional analysis videos is I try to just have a quick high-level look at the particular position we're looking at, because I think there might be a lot of new players out there, or people who maybe are not very experienced, and they might be wondering why are these guys spending so much money on fullbacks and centers and not your second rowers or your hookers or whatever it may be. And so I try to set the scene a little bit. So as you can see on the screen, this is looking back at the last 3 seasons, the top 20 averaging players from every single season, and it's ordered from top to bottom of those top 20, and I've got their positions. So you can see, especially from like 2024 onwards, the center wing position is really starting to come in as a really high upside, high averaging position for SuperCoach. 2023, you only had 3 guys in Mazu, Isako, and Dane Gagai. But since Herbie Farnworth has moved to the Dolphins, he's got into the top 20 in both years, 74 and 84 averages. Obviously, he was the best averaging center wing in 2025. I think Lomax at Parramatta also stepped it up a lot. He had a 79 and 78 average in both of those years. And Karaz as well has stepped it up too. So those 3 are the kind of gun centre wings that I think a lot of people were looking at in the last couple of seasons. But you can see there's just an absolute cluster of guys: Kiraz, Lucas, Mark Nwangani-Tuasi, Val Holmes, Fletcher Sharp, Tavita Nafahu from the Dolphins in his limited games. So I think centre wing is obviously a position that has got high upside, and I think we're also seeing the emergence of these centre wings who've just got high work rates too. So when it used to be a low floor, high ceiling position, it's now a bit of a high floor, high ceiling position. That's why it's so coveted. So you can basically see that here in the position breakdown. So that's kind of why there's going to be so much focus on the centre wing position, and why you're going to find a lot of people are targeting expensive centres to start the year as well. So this is the draw as well from round 1 to 6. So I won't spend that much time on this. I've done videos on the draw already. This is ordered from 1 to 6 based on my spreadsheet, which also you can find a link for I think there's a link to my website in the description. If not, I'll put it in there. Just if you shout me $4.50 for a coffee, you can get a draw difficulty sorting spreadsheet. There's a video on the channel as well that explains it. But let's get into everything in a bit more detail. Let's look at the guns to start off with. So obviously there's some questions already on Kiraz, Iro. I'm sure there'll be something on Herbie as well. So these are the players in the centering position who averaged over 70 last year. So you have Herbie, Kiraz, Mark Nwangani-Tuasi, Val Holmes, Kel Iro, Taylor May, and then Tavita Nafahu. Now, Nafahu, I'm broadly going to ignore from the analysis, and that's no slight on him. It's purely just because with Selwyn Cobbo now moving to the Dolphins, I would suspect that the wing positions are going to be Cobbo, Isako, and then there's Bostock in the mix there as well. So I just don't think, whilst Tavita Nafahu had a great end of 2025, don't think he's going to be really an option to start round 1 for this year. So I'm not really going to talk about him, but I guess him being here does show that the Dolphins as an attack are very good, because obviously two of their left-sided centre wings, the centre and the wing on their left edge, are both averaging over 70 and one of them over 80. So I think the Dolphins as a team overall, there's something to be keeping in mind there for sure. So one of the questions I'll answer straight off the bat from Mark Lawless is, hi mate, Kiraz or Iro, who to start off with? So ownership would suggest that the majority of people are looking at Kiraz. So he does have that early buy in round 2, but decent draw though for the first 6 with the Dragons in Vegas. Then you've got the Knights and the Rabbitohs in round 4 and 5. Kiraz with an average of 76.4 last year versus Iro's 72.2. You can see below me as well the composition of those averages based on base stats, evasive, create and score. So base and evade are the two main parts of a centre wing scoring, because that's their work rate and the tackle busting and offloads. Of course, create is things like line break assists, try assists, but centre wingers aren't necessarily the ones often getting that. And then of course the scoring. So your tries and your goal kicks for the likes of someone like, say, a Val Holmes, who's a goal kicker as well. So between Kiraz and Iro, what I've got on the next slide is some extra detailed stats, because I wanted to get into all of this, and probably just another plug as well for the Patreon. What I will try to do as much as I can, but what I did in particular in this occasion. So I finished these centre wing slides, I think this morning. So what I've done, these slides are out on Patreon exclusively for people on Patreon. So obviously we'll talk through all the slides and you can see it, and if you want to, you can pause it and take screenshots. But I would rather encourage, if you went onto Patreon, you can see these slides and you can refer back to them whenever you want. So we're going to get into the weeds of it here with some of these detailed stats. So particularly on Kiraz and Iro. So one of the reasons why I like Kiraz a lot is if he's playing on the wing, his numbers show that he's a gun. So his wing average was 81.3 in 2025 and it was 84 in 2024. So even though he had that average of 76, I actually think he's somewhat value, because if you suspect him to be playing on the wing, he's actually more realistically a player averaging over 80, because he's got some games at center and fullback that do drag his average down. So 2025, he had a few games playing either center or fullback. His average was 60.5. And then he also in 2024 had some games at center where he averaged 57. So you can see that really does drag him down. So I think if you see Kiraz playing on the wing, I more look at him as someone who will actually average 80 plus. And if you also look at the table below me, this is looking at all of these gun centers minus Nafahu. And it looks at over the last 4 years, how have each of them averaged from rounds 1 till 9. And Kiraz seems to have got a pretty solid start to the year in the last 4 years. So 88 last year was incredible. 64 in 2024, 69 in 2023, and then 56 in 2022. But I think 56 2022 was his breakout year. So more looking at the last 3 years, 88, 69, and 64. kind of suggests he's going to be around that 70s average to start off with, but on the wing, he's more likely to average over 80. Iro, in comparison, of course, his sample size is much lower, but at 79 average to start last year, round 1 to 9, and it was 67 in 2024. Iro did have some injury-affected games last year, so his true 80-minute average was 76.9. So I think on face value, I look at it and say Iro's probably a 75 to 76 averaging center, Kiraz probably over 80. Given the price difference is about 40k, so that price is the higher average is factored in. But I still think, I know there's an early buy, but I just feel like Kiraz is an absolute set and forget over 80 averaging. He could be the number one averaging center to start the year. So me personally, I would start with Kiraz, but I can put a big argument for Iro. I think Iro could honestly be the breakout center of this year, and he could be like the Herbie of 2025. So I'll give you guys a quick snippet because I love you all so much. But this is what I put out on Patreon basically. So there's a bit of commentary that I put together as well. So again, you can look at this and think if this is if this is of value to you, and then then you can obviously go to the Patreon and check it out. So some extra detailed stats on Kale Iro. What I like the most about Iro is that, of course, he started as a rookie in 24. I think what you're seeing though is in the last kind of 3 big blocks of seasons, if you want to call it, he's actually showing probably to just get better and better. So if you look at round 19 to 27 of 2024, so back end of 2024, his average was 80. Start of round 1 to 9 last year, 79. Midpoint, so rounds 10 to 18 in 2025, 76. So the last 3 big blocks of time, he's actually been an 80, 79, and 76 averaging player. And he's priced at 72. And his floor is insane. He's got a base power average of 50 in 2025, 53 in 2024. Of course, he got a lot of attack last year. And that will be some of the counters to Iro, is saying, well, can he keep up that rate of try scoring? But part of my brain is thinking, is this just a guy who's getting better and better? There's no Mulatalo to start off as well. So we know that the left edge of the Sharks generally is preferred. With no Mulatalo, does that mean that Kale Iro is actually just going to command more of the ball and get more of those attacking opportunities? So I kind of think that there might not be much regression from Iro. And in fact, we might actually be seeing a guy who's more likely to average 77. So it is fairly close between him and Kiraz. Honestly, I'm kind of trying to start a build of my team where I've got Iro and Kiraz because I just love that these guys have got such insanely high floors, but they've also got good upside. And they're just set and forget. And they're both from good teams as well, which I like. The Sharks draw is good. They don't have a bye till round 7. So 50, like between the two, I still slightly prefer Kiraz, but I really think Iro could be honestly an awesome pick to start 2026. So, someone was asking, will Zach Lomax play this year? Look, I haven't really talked that much about Lomax. I haven't even included him on these graphics just because there's so much uncertainty with him. If we find out that Lomax will play, I think it comes down to position. Does he play on the wing or center? I think he's better on the wing. And then, which club does he play for? Will he get the goal kicking at the particular club? When we don't know that information just yet, I just don't, in my head, think it's worth even really putting all that time and effort to put the analysis together. So that's why I just haven't put him in there yet. But I don't honestly know, David, if he will be playing this year. Aman, do you fix your hair before you start stream? Of course. Got to make sure the hair's looking good. I know that's why you guys are actually here. You're not here for the content. Yeah, so Chris, to your point, you're saying Iro is a base beast, but he scored a lot of tries last year. If the tries dry up slightly this year, could we get him at a bargain at some point, maybe during the origin period? You definitely could, and there is an argument for that. But what I like with Iro, I'll quickly show you again. So his average last year at home was actually 63.5, but away was 82.6. So his average was better away from home. But what I like is that he's got better home games to start the season. So Titans is at home, Dolphins is at home, the Warriors is at home, and then the Roosters is at home. And then his away games are Penrith and Canberra. So those 2 away games are tough in rounds 2 and 4. But if he's a good averaging player away from home, then maybe he'll be fine. I think he's one of those players where, look, he's 8%, so he's not going to hurt you if you don't start with him. But I look at the flip side and say he's only 8%. So is there an opportunity there to start with him when not many others will? And I definitely prefer him to, say, like a Mark Nwangani-Tawasi, who's got a little bit more ownership. So on Nwangani-Tawasi, of course, he killed it last year for the Roosters, but he was extremely try-reliant. So you can see the scoring average for him was 18 points a game. That's basically 1 try per game he was getting in scoring. Iro was at 15, so again, very, very close. So you'd probably argue that Nwangani Tuasi is more likely to score these tries. But as you can see, Iro's got 10 points of extra base stats on Mark Nwangani Tuasi. So they're kind of slightly offsetting each other. And I think at the start of the year when maybe the attack isn't as predictable, relying on guys who've got good base is kind of where I'm leaning, which is why I like your Karaz, your Iros. We'll get to them later, but like a Brian To'o as well. You know, those are the guys that I'm trying to keep, or trying to start with, basically. But Nwangani Tuasi as well, I think he needs to be playing on the wing for me to have interest. But I'm probably happy to go without Nwangani Tuasi just to start off with, I think, because he is attack reliant. But his average at centre last year was 69.8. On the wing was 78.3. But I think even most importantly, 4 of his 100 plus scores came on the wing, only 1 came at centre. So I think that shows that for Nwangani Tuasi, you really do need him to be playing on the wing, I think, which he very well could, and you might want to go with him as a bit of a pod to start off with. But I think for the same price, with a bit more consistency, with the goal kicking, I would probably take a Val Holmes over Nwangani Tuasi. As you can see on the screen here, Val Holmes over the last 2 seasons has started rounds 1 to 9 with a 73 and 80 average. So he's pretty safe when it comes to scoring well out of the blocks. And then obviously during Origin, I can't even remember if he played Origin for Queensland last year, but during Origin maybe is a time when you can move away from Val Holmes. Dragons, a bit of a hot and cold team. The draw's a little bit up and down with Bulldogs, Melbourne, but then Para, Titans, Cowboys. I don't mind Val though as a bit of a set and forget. Steady Eddie, you kind of know what you're going to get with him. He's got the same ownership as Iro, so I kind of depend on pick your poison. Do you want the base stats or do you want the extra goal kicking? See, what I found surprising was that I thought Val Holmes would have a bit of bigger ceiling than Iro, which he probably does. But in terms of the number of games scoring over 80, Iro actually scored over 80 36% of the time, and Val Holmes 29%. So Iro had the slight edge of actually hitting that 80 plus score more often. And this isn't based on number of games, this is a percentage of games. So it kind of accounts for any players who missed games through injuries and whatnot. Herbie's obviously the clear standout at the top there with almost half of his games he was scoring over 80, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm going to see if there's any questions really on Herbie Farnworth. Aussie Sports Geek saying, when is the league coming? The league is actually open, and apologies, I was supposed to put it on the screen here, but I forgot. I will write out the code. The code is 564671. 564671. Let me write that in the chat actually. 564671. Sorry, someone's trying to call me. Don't know what's going on there. But yeah, so that's kind of, if I look at Karaz, Marky, Val, and Iro, I'd say Karaz number 1. I'm leaning a bit more towards Iro, saving the 30,000. Then I'd probably go Val. Then I'd probably go Nwangani Tuasi. Now, where does Herbie fit into all of this? That's really the tricky question, because he's so expensive at 825, but the draw still looks really good to me in the first couple with Rabbitohs and Titans. Like, I'm scared of him in those first couple of weeks. I did a bit of a deep dive on Herbie as well, that was published over, I think I published this on, maybe I haven't published this anywhere yet. Well, here you go, exclusive. I haven't published this anywhere, I think, that I can think of. Maybe it's on Instagram. But I think basically with Herbie, you can see that at the Dolphins, he's just become the main man there. His averages are 84 and 74 at the Finns. To start rounds 1 to 9 in the last 2 seasons, 73 and 53. So, like, part of me looks at these numbers and says, round 1 to 9, apart from last year, Herbie was someone who was more around the 50s, and it was always during the middle of the season and the back end of the season that he would actually take off. Was last year just a bit of an outlier, or are we actually seeing the real Herbie? It's really hard to say at this point. Like, he's got the best base power average pretty much out of any centre wing out there, even better than a Karaz. The draw does scare me, but part of me just thinks for 825k, you're paying top dollar. And I just can't see an improvement, at least to start the year. If he matches it, then well played to anyone who started with him, because then you're getting what you paid for. But yeah, at the moment, when money is tight at the beginning of the year, and when I feel like you're paying close to 800k for a player, like over 800, again, I think I mentioned it in the fullback video, or maybe in another video, but I start thinking about captaincy a lot and thinking, will I vice captain or captain this guy? And if I'm not really going to do it a lot, is it like, it's a bit of the fantasy Premier League thinking where with your really expensive premium players, the reason you have a lot of these guys is for captaincy purposes. I mean, Herbie is a great VC or captain shout to start in rounds 1 or 2. But I might just default to like a Payne Haas and lock in like a 75 to 80. So, or I might use like a fullback. Like, I'm more likely to use a Payne Haas and a fullback as my VC C combination start the year. So at the moment, I'm finding it hard to start with Herbie just because of price. And I'm trying to take a gamble. And this is something I've also thought about based on the video I put out, which had the tips from Finn, who won Supercoach last year. So he anti-potted Garrick last year and started with Farnworth. And his rationale was that Farnworth was really highly owned. Garrick was really highly owned. And could he counter him with someone else who he thought would break out? And I'm wondering if like an Iro is that person this year. So part of me thinks not start with Farnworth. I won't discourage anyone who wants to. But as Harry Taylor says here, which doesn't really help me, Herbie is locked in as my captaincy in round 1. Totally unrelated. I'm a Finn supporter. Look, if you're a Finn supporter, then you got to play this game to have fun as well. I definitely will advise that. So if that's what's going to make you have enjoyment of this game, then, of course, absolutely go for it and captain Herbie in the first round. But I'm finding it really difficult to start with Herbie. I think I'm more likely... I'm pretty locked into Karaz, I think. I know he's got the bye in round 2 and then the tough draw in round 3. But I think he's just someone who I know I'm going to want to get. So just start with him. He's got a good game in round 1 as well. So I think I'm just going to lock in Karaz from round 1. And then, again, with the Titans matchup in round 1, I can see myself getting tempted as well into an Iro. Maybe taking a bit of a flyer on Kale Iro. So that's where I'm at currently with these really expensive gun center wings. Hopefully that helps some of you out there. Someone asked, would you rank Iro or Val? Which one would you pick? At the moment, I'm slightly leaning Iro just because he's got the 30k discount. And I think I just trust the team a little bit better. But there's no knocking Val. He's the goal kicker. He'll probably be a little bit forgotten about just because he was injured to the back end of last year. At the moment, my gut is slightly telling me Iro, but it's really hard with these gun center wings. Of course, if you're always 50-50, you can't absolutely break the decision between them. Start with a more expensive guy in Val. You can always trade downwards, but it's a bit harder to do the opposite. So that's the other piece of advice I'd probably give to people if they've got some dilemmas out like that. So that's some of my thoughts on the guns. Let's get into what I'd consider to be your guns light. So your center wings that average between your 60 to 70 points. Captain Harry, will the real Herbie stand up? Herbie has a great buy schedule. There's a lot of Herbie love in the chat, and I can absolutely understand it. But me personally, I'm just kind of thinking 1 or 2 of them is what I'm going to fit in. And Karaz, I think I'm locked into. I'd probably rather start with a Val or an Iro and save that money over a Farnworth. Anyone's wondering? No, I'm not drinking a beer. I'm trying to reduce my beer intake this year, but I'm having a Mount Franklin sparkling water lime flavored, so it's very good. Keeps me hydrated. So the gun's light. There's a bunch of names here, so it's going to be hard to talk about all of these in detail. Again, another reason why, if you're in the Patreon, it's useful to maybe have this on hand. You can just kind of refer back to it. I have crunched the numbers on pretty much all of these guys and just tried to add some brief comments. So, of course, the guys who are more popular, you can see Latrell Mitchell at 40% ownership and Brian To'o at 27%. Everyone else is basically a pod. So I think we'll basically just start with those two. Given that they're so highly owned, of course, people are probably going to be more interested in them. So Latrell, he's got pretty much the lowest floor out of anyone on this list here. So as you can see in the 4th column, the base power average from last year, Latrell's was 28. And there was no one else lower than that on this particular list of names here. Brian To'o's was 48. So one of the best out there. Only Marzu has actually got higher. He has a 50 base power average from last year. To'o's following up that with a 48, but of course playing for a much better Penrith team, despite a tough draw. So Latrell's really, really highly owned. I've got him currently in my team. The draw isn't great with Dolphins, Roosters. Well, Dolphins, Roosters, Tigers is okay, but then it's the bye, then it's Bulldogs, Canberra. So it's not the best set of games on paper, but I think what we've seen from Latrell, he's pretty matchup proof. It doesn't really matter who he's playing. Look, it's round 1, so Latrell want to come out with a flash. Round 2 is against the Roosters, the rivalry is an old club, so of course you might want to play good for that. Then you got the Tigers, so Tigers at home looks good. Then it's Bulldogs, another big game. Canberra, another big game. I kind of just feel like Latrell's a big game player, and you don't really need to worry about the draw so much. He only had 2 games playing at centre last year for an average of 65. Now, based on current lineup predictions, centre is probably where Latrell will play, but I wonder if he's going to still get maybe involved in the attacking positions as a fullback. Of course, he's got the goal kicking as well. So if you just expect a general upwards trend from the Rabbitohs this year, maybe more goal kicking for Latrell. The fact that he's priced at his price is 64.1 average, and he averaged 65 at 2 games in center in 2025. It feels like to me, yes, you might lose a bit of money on Latrell to start if he doesn't start the best, but I just feel like he's one of those picks where if you start with him from round 1, just keep him for as long as you can, ideally speaking, just because you think that he would be able to come good. And normally Latrell is only available to us at fullback. So I think having him at center is a bit of a luxury position this year. So I'm finding it pretty difficult to not start with Latrell as well. I think you can kind of just lock and load with him. But I can understand many people out there who maybe aren't so keen on him, just if they look at the tough draw and maybe don't like the fact that he's playing at center. But his center average from last year was okay at 65. And then you got Brian To'o at 27% ownership, which feels a little bit low to me. Like, he has a 61 average from last year, but the 2 seasons prior to that, he averaged over 70. And of course, he's got that really high floor, 48 base power average. And when it gets to the start of the season, I think I'm kind of looking more at guys who've got good floors, ideally, just because the attacking numbers aren't as strong normally at the beginning of seasons. If you check out my early draw video, we dig into that for rounds 1 to 6. The scoring Supercoach wise is normally lower for players in general, but it's generally better for the forwards, less so the backs. So I think I want to get these guys who've got really safe floor. So even at the start of the year, like if Toto's just punching out 55 to 60 for the first kind of 3 to 4 weeks, I'll just be like, you know what, that's fine. He's priced at sub 600k, so it's not like I paid 700k for Toto. So I think the ownership's a little bit low, in my opinion. I would happily start with Toto. I can see someone in the chat is saying here, I think it's Tahi Bro saying, I've gone Herbie, Carraz, Young, Stone Street, May, Fail, and Farley and Chester. So there's no Brian Toto in there. Like me personally, actually the price is a little bit different, but I would probably be, instead of Young, if that's a Dom Young, probably taking a punt, I guess, on Brian Toto instead. But that's me speaking personally. I'm just much more keen on these guys who've got these really safe floors. Lachlan saying, really can't decide my thoughts on Latrell. Guaranteed sell at Origin with buy schedule, assuming he makes Origin. Yeah, that's fair enough. And like some teams, like say the Cowboys, for example, have got very, very good schedules for Origin for buy coverage, because they don't have a buy, I think, up until say round 15. So you can pick their players and not really need to worry about them. Latrell does have that early buy, but I think he's one of those players who, it's Latrell. We know how good he can be. And if I don't start with him and he's 40% owned, and maybe that's higher, if I don't own him to start and then he comes out and kills it, I'll just feel like a bit of an idiot, to be honest. So that's kind of why I'm just also picking him to slightly protect myself. And if he flops and he doesn't start so well, at least it's like, look, I went with the pack and I thought I was investing in a gun player and it just hasn't quite worked out to start the year. So maybe I'll move off and say round 4. That's one of the good things as well. You can give it the first 3 weeks, and if you really don't like what you're seeing, you can move off of him in round 4. You know, round 4 could be a good point to move on to someone like a Herbie if he's come down a bit in price, or maybe you jump onto a Val in round 4 who's got the Titans and then the Cowboys. So there are exits that you can potentially look at as well with Latrell. He's priced highly enough there that you can move off of him if you're not so keen on him after the first 3 weeks. So Latrell and Toto, I'm pretty set on. Everyone else on this list here is generally a pretty big pod. So just some ones that will probably, I'm just going to go and probably rule out, I think, for the moment. So Ruben Garrick is probably one that I'm going to rule out, which is a bit surprising because he's such a gun of the seasons gone past. But average of 68, so a bit of a down year last year, but he's going to lose the goal kicking. So it looks as though with Jamal Fogarty moving to the Manly Sea Eagles, it looks like Fogarty's going to be taking the goal kicking off of Garrick based on reports. And if that's the case, I crunched the numbers. Garrick averaged about 10 points a game last year in goal kicking. So assuming he just performs the same minus the 10 points in kicking, that's 10 points less on his average. So I just think he's going to be overpriced if he's lost the goal kicking. Again, with Manly, they've got that early bye in round 3. No Cherry Evans. So how good are Manly going to go to start the year? I'm not quite sure. So I'm probably going to rule out Garrick myself, at least for the start of the year. Probably do the same with an Alex Johnson. I think he's one of those guys who's a bit more volatile. I'd probably prefer to get on him when maybe you've got a bit more data on the good teams and the bad teams, and then you can pick him when maybe the draw opens up a little bit. For a round 1 start, probably wouldn't be for me, just given that he's got a 30 base power average, so it's one of the lower ones on the list here. I'm probably also going to be, actually to be fair, those are probably the guys that I'd be absolutely ruling out, I think, at this current point in time. Tuivasa Sheck obviously ended the year really strong with a 68.6 average, and his 80-minute game average last year was 70.5. Post-Origin is when he absolutely killed it and went on an average 75.7. So I think with Tuivasa-Sheck, you kind of know what you're going to get. Really, really good floor with a base power average of 46. But again, I'm probably trying to look for more value in this particular category of players. So I'm just thinking, yeah, RTS is solid. He'll do the job. But he started last season also a bit cheaper. I think it was mid 500s last year at 670 when the Warriors, their draw looks not the best. You got Roosters, Raiders, Melbourne in the first 6, Sharks as well in there. I'm probably just happy to just pass on to RTS, I think, to start off with. Maybe one that you look back to during, say, the Origin period. Christian Tuipulotu, I think it just really depends what's happening with the Dragons wingers. You've got Tyrell Sloan, Tuipulotu, but then you've got Setu Tu and David Farley who are competing. And some reports suggesting that both of those rookie wingers will get the start round 1, but who knows at this point. Tuipulotu had a really strong average last year in his non-injury affected games. For 8 games, he averaged 77.1. So I think he's definitely someone who I'd be more than happy to invest in. I jumped on Tuipulotu last year, I think, as well in round 3. For round 1, no, just because it's Bulldogs in Melbourne. Maybe round 3, though, if it looks like he's set for a price drop and he's got that spot locked in on the wing, then maybe I'll invest in round 3, round 4. Draw opens up a little bit at that point because the average last year was good in non-injury affected games, and we know that the Dragons prioritize going down that left-hand side. So Tuipulotu, not for me round 1, but I think definitely someone to be thinking about. Penrith opening draw is gross. Can't see Toto scoring well. That's definitely something to be concerned about with Penrith, is that draw is very tough. But again, my counter is probably that, look, Penrith I think should be on the up. They've had a pretty settled off-season. They haven't lost a bunch of players this year like they have had in every other year in the last few years. And he's got that really good floor of 48. So he might not come out and average 55 to... Well, sorry. He may come out averaging 55 to 60. But as I said, I'm kind of okay with that. I'm looking at Toto as a bit of a more long-term pick. Don't really need to worry about him. He's got good base, so he's never really going to get me a poor score. And it's Penrith. So if he just scores a try, he's more likely going to get me 70 points. And Penrith, I still expect Penrith to score some tries, even if they've got a tough draw. So I think with a Toto who's sub 600k, I'm okay with that. But for Cleary, for example, Cleary is when we start thinking about it a little bit more harder, given when he's priced in the 800ks. Megalodon says, Soz on late, that's a fresh haircut. Thank you very much. I think I got this haircut 2 weeks ago. I don't know about you guys out there as well, but I found a week after my haircut, or maybe 2 weeks after my haircut, is when it looks its best. Straight after the haircut, I'm like, it's too fresh. It's like, when you rub the back of your head and it's like, it's kind of got that nice feeling, but it's like, it's too fresh. Like it's prickly almost. So after a week, 2 weeks is when everything's grown in just that little bit more. I'm like, yeah, now we're cooking. So yeah, no, I appreciate the comment, Megalodon, on the haircut. NRL SuperCoach just announced something on their Insta. What is it? This is why it's so good to do this live, because if I was just doing this at home recorded, I'd have no idea what you're talking about. Announcement, 9 a.m. tomorrow. What is it? What have they sent? Or what have they posted? A rocket, a microphone, a rugby ball, and a ticket. Can you guess what it is? Ooh, I don't know. Maybe, well, I mean, you guys let me know as well, but they did it a couple of years ago. They did the Vegas games at the Star, which was awesome. That was a good event, but I don't think they'll do that this year because I think the Vegas games are at like midnight, so they're probably not going to be doing that. I was wondering if it was that for a second, but yeah, maybe they're teasing like a new podcast or something, because I'm looking at the microphone, the rocket, so taking off. So maybe they're putting out a new podcast. Or is that an NFL ball? I don't know. I was wondering, maybe is it a ticket to the Super Bowl or for someone? I've got no idea. But anyway, we're getting a bit distracted. You guys can keep hypothesizing in the chat. I need to keep getting through the center wings. But yeah, so that's some of my thoughts on like RTS, Tuipulotu, Garrick, Latrell, and Toto. I'll try to get through things a little bit faster. So I think you've got some other pods like Bradman Best, who got a really good floor with a base power average of 47. But I also look at him and don't think he's really a value pick. I'd actually probably take Marzu if he's a little bit cheaper. But then again, there's some conjecture about what the Newcastle Knights will do for their backline, because there's some talk that Fletcher Sharp has been practicing or training on the wing to start the year, because of course the halves will be Sanders Smith and Dylan Brown by the look of it. So if they've got a Fletcher Sharp on one wing, Dom Young on the other, there's no space for Marzu. So I think Marzu just becomes a bit of a you just have to wait and see. I'd love Marzi to be an option because obviously he was a Supercoach gun of the past. He's got a really strong base power average of 50. Probably can't go with Marzu. Bradman Best you can consider. And I'd probably prefer to get him over like a Fletcher Sharp, just because Fletcher Sharp's priced in the 700s. But Best just feels like he's a safe option. He is what he is. He is what he is. But he's probably not going to be offering awesome value. Draw's not bad. But again, I think for 650 plus K, I'd probably just start saying, you know what, at that point, pay the 50K extra and just try to get to like an Eero or like a Val Holmes type at that point. Or come down to like a Brian To'o. I find this 650K price tag a little bit awkward. Casey McLean is definitely a consideration as well. In his 80-minute games, he averaged 70.2, but he's priced at a 66.8. So there's a little bit of value there in him. The only reason I'm not sold on him, I guess, to start the year, even though his ownership is decent at 8%, is he scored 14 tries in 19 games. So that's a pretty strong strike rate for try scoring for a center. Just wondering, is that going to be replicated? And at the least at the beginning of the season when they've got this tough draw. So I'm happy to go with To'o because he's cheaper and he's got a better base power average. It's an extra 10 points. So I know the draw's tough. I'll take To'o over McLean, but 653K for McLean does feel a little bit pricey to me personally. So I'm probably not going to be starting with McLean, but I don't mind him as a draft pick or if you want to go with him as a bit of a pod, because even though the work rate's not as good as say like a Bradman Best, again, I probably trust the team a little bit more. Now, some interesting ones here, Murray Taulagi and Braden Burns. So the Cowboys, as we said before, they've got one of the better draws and they don't have a bye until like round 15. Braden Burns actually has an awesome base power average. So his base power average last year was 48. He's virtually in no teams as well. So again, he's maybe someone who's a bit of a sneaky pick for draft. His average last year in his over 70-minute games was 69 points with 50.5 points in base power. So he's got an insane floor. Possibly there's some value with him. Maybe an extra 4 to 5 points of value. So he's probably the uber pod of uber pods is Braden Burns. And he's got that insanely high work rate. So look, I'll probably not start with him. Probably won't have the room for him. Probably the same thing I'd say with Murray Taulagi. Just given that with the Cowboys, we still don't quite know how that team is going to function. They're not like a top 8 side. But with Taulagi, his injuries cut his season a bit short last year. We generally know that he's more preferred for the wings in terms of the ball going down his side than the other side. So he's more likely to get the attack compared to like a Braden Burns. But I do think that Taulagi is a solid option maybe at 648. If I was picking one of the two though, I'd probably just pick Braden Burns because he's got that better upside. He's got the better floor. But he's also a little bit cheaper and he's also way less. Well, they're both pretty lowly owned at 0%. So maybe a couple of pods there to consider at the Cowboys. They've got a good draw as well. And yeah, they're actually not bad looking with mid-60s averages. Now, Philip Sammy, 623K with a base power average of 46. He's always seemed relevant, but I just don't know if I can get around it. He gets moved around a lot as well. He moves between the wing and the center position. His center average last year was 64.5. His wing average was 62.3. So not really too much to decide between the two. The draw is pretty good though, rounds 2 to 6. So again, I put him in the same bucket as like a Taulagi and Braden Burns. If you're feeling it, if you've got that good gut vibe, just go for it, and why not? At least with Sammy and Braden Burns, they've got pretty good underlying work rate and good underlying base power. So yeah, personally not for me, just because it's the Titans and I'm not sure if I want to be spending that money on a Titans center. When instead for cheaper, I can go pick a Penrith winger in To'o or Latrell Mitchell for $3,000 extra. So that's kind of why I'm not at the moment really going for guys like Braden Burns, Taulagi, Sammy. And you can see their ownership is so low. But if you're considering for draft or maybe looking for Uber pods in Classic, those are a few names out there that maybe you can be considering. Yeah, so Lachlan is saying that Burns is someone who intrigues me. Yeah, he is intriguing when you look at those numbers because his base power average was insane from last year. Now you've got Jermaine Asako and Nick Meaney, so you're goal-kicking centers now, so things getting a little bit more spicy. So Asako's got that upside. He's got 3 tons last year. The issue I just have with him is 1, he's got that low floor of 31, and 2 is just that I think the left wing or the left edge for the Dolphins is just going to be the side that they're always going to go to. So Herbie killed it last year. Bostock had big games. Tavita Nafahu did really well in that left wing. Asako, just the last 2 seasons, he's just not really profited that much. So he had that big year in 2020, 2023, I want to say it was. Let's have a quick look here just to confirm it. So, yeah, Jermaine Osako last year average of 62, 2024 63, 2024 63, 2023 77. I'm starting to think that 2023 year was a bit of an outlier. Is the last 2 years more representative of what he is? Which, if it is, he's kind of priced at what his value is. So there's not really value in him. Plus, I think you're just not getting the best side of the Dolphins at that point in time. So, yeah, for example, if Cobbo was playing on the left wing, I'd almost just say, you know what, instead of Osako, just try pick Cobbo, and he's about 80k cheaper, but at least you're getting someone on that left edge. I think that's definitely the better edge for the Dolphins. Because he can have games where, like I'm looking at it here, I mean, having the goal kicking is good, but I'm looking at games from last year where he scored like, let's see, just trying to find a good example. Yeah, there was a game in round 24, he scored 39 points, 24 points of it was in scoring. I don't know if he scored a try, but I'm willing to bet a lot of that was goal kicks. So the fact that he's got the goal kicking will have him avoid some like really, really low games, but he just doesn't have that work rate. His highest base game last year was 35, but he had games where he was basing 7, 19, 21, 22, 23, a lot of 21, a lot of early 20 games in the base stats. So I think Osako, yeah, not for me personally, just because of the left dominant team. Now, Nick Meaney is intriguing, 598k, so the same price as To'o. In the games that he goal kicked last year, his average was 69.1. So again, I'm looking at like 8 points of value there. And his 3 games at fullback last year was 68.7. So I think what you can see with him is that if he takes up the goal kicking full time, he's actually probably close to a mid 60s to high 60s averaging player. So that I do like that there's some value in him. I expect Suafa'alongo to get the fullback spots to start off with for Melbourne. But honestly, I actually think Meaney is a very viable shout as a bit of a point of difference player, because the draw is good to start. Parramatta, Dragons, Broncos is at home, Cowboys, Penrith, and then the Warriors. And Melbourne also don't have a bye, I think, until round 13, or they don't have a bye in the first 13 weeks. So again, if you're thinking for draft, or if you're looking at a bit of a pod at centre wing, like for example, let's just say you can't afford it. Let's say you've got a Carraz, let's say you've got Latrell, To'o. You'd love your fourth centre to be like an Iro, but you just can't afford it. I don't mind a Nick Meaney, to be honest, at sub 600k. I think there seems to be a bit of a value proposition in him. He can be a bit of a frustrating own though, just if you do have him, because if you look at some of his scores from last year, in the games that he was goal kicking, there's still like a 46, there's a 55, there's a 61. So he can have these kind of games where he's just meandering around the 60s. And also remember that he averaged 61.2 last year, but he had that enormous game in round 18 where he scored 165. Without that game, he's probably an averaging player more in the 50s. So again, that one score is inflating his numbers just a tad. But again, he is the full-time goal kicker we expect for Melbourne with no Pappenhausen there. So I still think that he might be at value, but if anything, he could actually be offering more value. So I actually don't hate him as a bit of a point of difference option as well. So I think, kind of to summarize this whole section of centre wings, I'd be saying definitely the To'o I'm very keen on. I do like a Nick Meaney. And then if you're looking to get real spicy, someone like your Braden Burns or a Phil Sammy. And then RTS is what he is, but probably not really offering, too much value. But not very high ownership in this particular section. So let's get on to the next one. So these are the guys who are averaging between the 50s to 60s. So the names that I've got on the list here, we've got Purdue, Tamale, Cobbo, Dom Young, Jesse Ramian, Sam Stonestreet, Campbell Graham, Will Warbrick from Melbourne, and then Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. So big range of prices here, but these are the guys who I thought would be more interesting. And there's a little bit more ownership on these guys than there is on the guys that I just spoke about. So just to start off with them, you've got Jackson Purdue. So he averaged 58 last year, 7% owned. The thing with Purdue though, I will say this, if you're thinking of picking him, I probably wouldn't pick him at center. I'd probably pick him at 5'8" instead, because he has got the dual eligibility, and 5'8's a bit of a tough position. His average last year at center was 58.7. It was 52 at 5'8. So his numbers do look a little bit better playing at the center position rather than 5'8. And it's rumored that he will be the starting 5'8 instead for the Cowboys to start this year. On that basis, I'm probably not too keen on Purdue. I'm not really considering him, just because the Cowboys didn't seem the best with him playing in the halves anyway. The draw is good, but I'm kind of only really confident in probably like Scott Drinkwater in the backs. Purdue could prove me wrong, and he's an up-and-coming player, could better that 58 average, but for me, he's kind of priced at value. The benefit of him last year was that he was a cheapie. That's just not going to be the case this year. So I'm probably not personally looking at Jackson Purdue that much. If you're interested in a Cowboys back and center, of course, the cheapest one is Purdue out of him, Taulagi, and Braden Burns. So if you're willing to take a flyer, but you're not wanting to spend over 600k, Purdue is probably the guy for you there. I do prefer Tamale or Cobo to him though, at similar price in that kind of 500k range. So Tamale was awesome last year as the cheapie center wing for the Raiders. Averaged 55.9 with a really good work rate, base power average of 42. In his 80-minute games though last year, his average was 59.5 with an average of 44 base power. So a little bit of value in him, assuming that he plays 80 minutes because he did have that injury-affected game last year. He's playing for a good Canberra Raiders team. Manly, Warriors, Bulldogs, Sharks, first month is okay. Then it's a little bit better maybe with the Newcastle and the Rabbitohs. What I've noticed is that there's a lot of away games for the Raiders in the opening 6 weeks. So I'm not sure if some of these are on neutral venues. I'll have to double check that. But there's only 2 games at home at GIO with Bulldogs and Sharks. So I wonder if that's going to factor a little bit into my decision on whether to start with someone like a Tamale to begin the year. Admittedly, he's not someone I've heavily looked at that much. And looking at some of his scores from last year, it didn't really matter so much whether he was playing away or home, to be honest. I haven't done the numbers, but looking at it here on NRL SuperCoach Stats.com, it doesn't really matter if he's home or away. So I do feel like Tamale is definitely someone that you can consider. Maybe a little bit of value in him. Up-and-coming player again, so you can use that argument too. I personally would probably almost go like Cobo though, I think the work rate is not too different. So Cobo's base power average from last year was 38, so 6 points less than Tamale, but he's playing for a gun Dolphins attacking team, and if he plays on the left edge, I really do like him, and I'd probably go Cobo over Tamale just as a bit of a try to chase that higher ceiling, and I'd probably prefer the draw as well for the Dolphins, albeit they do have a bye in round 6. So I probably rank Cobo over Tamale just purely on the fact that I think Cobo is more likely going to get you 80 to 90 plus points than a Tamale will. Tamale, of course, is going to have the higher floor though. Now, some guys here as well to look at. You've got Dom Young, which I believe someone in the chat earlier was mentioning that they were starting with a Dom Young. So I'm not too keen personally just to start the year. I know he's been a Supercoach gun of the past, but that was more when he was at the Roosters. He obviously had a bit of a affected year last year because he was at the Roosters, then he switched to the Knights halfway through. So a bit of a disrupted year. He's got a low floor, but we know that he's got a very high ceiling. So I think you're just picking Dom Young on the trust of, do you trust the Knights, basically. I think if you are looking at a Knights player, so like, him, Bradman Best, Marzu, Fletcher Sharp, I would probably just take Dom Young, try to spend that a little bit less money, but know that you've got a guy who can go score big tons, because that's the one thing with Dom Young that he does have in his locker. He can score those big tons. So he scored 103 in round 19 against Melbourne of all teams, and this is when he was playing for the Knights. Scored 100 in round 12 against the Sharks as well. His high score in 2024 was 160. High score in 2023 was 148. This is one of those guys who can get 3-4 tries in a game. But again, I'm just trying to think, beginning of the year, I'd prefer to pick guys who've got good base stats, good base power, rather than these high upside guys. I know I just mentioned it with Cobo, but Cobo versus Tamale, Cobo's got not that different of a work rate in terms. The numbers aren't too different between Cobo and Dom Young, even, to be honest. But at least then, if I'm picking a player based on their attack, I'd pick the team with the better team, which for attacking purposes is 100% the Dolphins over the Newcastle Knights. So I think Cobo I'd definitely take over Dom Young. Ramian and Stone Street from the Sharkies. So Stone Street is fairly popular at 13% ownership, 55.3 average in 80 minutes last year. He does have a low floor, so his base power average is 31 from last year. And even his numbers in 2024, he scored a lot of tries. So Stone Street was in my original team reveal video. And the reason why he's more popular is because he's going to be playing that left wing spot while Mulatalo is out. And we know that left edge spot for the Sharkies is better. So I think people are just looking at it thinking he's sub 500k, you get a piece of that Sharks backline, and is on their better edge. So I definitely prefer him, I think, to a Ramian. There's only 6k price difference between them. I know Ramian's got a much better floor. His base power average is 46, but Ramian just doesn't really get the attack. Only scored 3 tries in 2025. I would 100% bank on Stone Street getting way more attack than Ramian, to the point where I would say, you know what, I think I can justify that lower floor guy between him and Ramian. So I don't mind Stone Street. He's still in my current team, but I'm looking at him as less of a, I have to start with this guy. I think this is also because I'm now thinking more and more. I'm really liking Iro. So do I want to start with the Kale Iro instead of like a Sam Stone Street? So I like Stone Street still though, as a pick for sure. And I can see him being, very popular to start the year. Schoolie Boy is saying, I can't see Jesse Ramian having a break. I can't see Jesse Ramian. Sorry, he's auto-correcting himself. I can see Jesse Ramian having a breakout year, being off contract. He'll want to impress. There is obviously something related to players coming off contract, they want to, put in a good performance and get that new contract as well. So look, Ramian's okay in that sense because he's got a good floor. You're not really going to lose out money-wise on him. But I'm not sure how much attack you're going to get from a Ramian. And just looking back over the last 2 years, this low 50s average is kind of what he is. So actually, no, you know what? I take that back. Maybe I should actually consider Ramian a bit more because average last year 51, 2024 65, 2023 57, 2022 59. So I think if you're looking at last year as a bit of a down year, and remember that 51 average is including an injury affected game. It's more like 54 in his non-injury affected games. So if you look at him and say, okay, 54 average, that's the lowest it's been in the last 4 years. Are you expecting a bounce back? If you are expecting a bounce back, you might get up to like a 60s average. And at least you know he's got a good floor to fall back on. And he's definitely a pod at 1% ownership. So again, if you're not keen on Stone Street, but you want someone from the Sharks similar price, then yeah, maybe Ramian is the guy for you. So yeah, looking at that a bit more detail, I actually don't mind a Ramian. Still would take a Cobbo or Tamale, I think, over Ramian. I'd probably take a Ramian over Purdue, though, in my opinion. The last 3 I've got on the list here, Campbell Graham. So Campbell Graham had no attack last year. Base power average of 44, and his average last year was 44.1. So the floor is insane. Very, very good base power average. It's just, will he get any attacking ball? Because he plays on that right edge for the Rabbitohs, and we know that they're left edge with Latrell, Alex Johnston, Dave Fafita. That left edge is just going to get so much more of the ball than Campbell Graham will. And I wonder if Campbell Graham is just going to be, I don't know if he's still going to be affected by that sternum injury that he had last year and that he was dealing with. Yeah, for me, I would be happy to buy him after I see him put in some good performances, and maybe if I see the Rabbitohs going more down that right-hand side and him getting more attack, then I might think, you know what, actually, Campbell Graham could be the guy, because prior to last year, he was a 69 and 63 averaging player in 23 and 22. So we know that he's got that potential. That's why he's 15% owned, but I think I need to see it first before I invest from round 1. Will Warbrick, he's priced in a little bit cheaper because he's priced at, I think he's priced in at around the mid 40s, but normally he's like a guy who averages around the 50s. Of course, last year he was affected by those head knocks. So he got that head knock in round 4 and he didn't come back until round 26. So he had a big, lengthy layoff. So scores of 43, 40, 42, and 63. So again, maybe he offers a little bit of value. You can get a piece of that good Melbourne attack. Actually, I realized I didn't even talk about him before, but Xavier Coates. I didn't even talk about Xavier Coates. So Coates, for example, I'd probably pick Coates over Warbrick, but there is 200k in it. But Coates is definitely the option from the Storm that they target the most. He's got that big upside of 4 tons last year, but he's very attack reliant, and he's got a base power average of 34, Xavier Coates. So if you want to pick from Melbourne, then Coates would be the one for me at centre wing. Actually, I'd probably take Meaney over Xavier Coates even, So if you're looking real budget and you're just trying to find someone who's 400k, then yeah, Warbrick might be the guy, but he's not got a high work rate. And Melbourne backs, while they seem to look good on paper, traditionally those SuperCoach wise, they're not actually that amazing, save for maybe Xavier Coates averaging 65 last year. So I'm not looking at Warbrick at the moment. The composition of my centre wing is probably going to be a Carraz, another gun, hopefully, Latrell To'o, and then fill out my bench with cheapies. So at the moment, I don't really have too much space for Warbrick, but maybe just one for you guys to consider, maybe for a draft, maybe potentially for your draft teams as well. Now, the last one is Wuteni Zalesniak. I'm not that keen on him at the moment. So very low floor, 30 base power average, only averaged 41 last year. If you take his 80-minute games, it's 43.2. But again, the attack just wasn't really going down Watene Zelezniak's way. He had that big year in 2023 when he averaged 70, but that was when the team was with Sean Johnson, and their pet player was Sean Johnson out the back to Nickel Klukstad, out to Watene Zelezniak. Since then, he's been on the downward trajectory. 55 average last year, 41 in 2025. It was a 42 average in 2022. I'm just not seeing enough there from either the draw or potentially what the Warriors will offer in terms of attacking setups to think that Watene Zelezniak is going to be like a bit of a mid-ranger cash cow. I think he's just going to be a bit of a frustrating own. So for me personally, not really looking at him. So of the guys on this particular set of names, Tamale, Cobbo, Ramey, and Stone Street, I'm definitely looking at. Campbell Graham's firmly on the watch, I think, for how the Rabbitohs perform from round one onwards. And same with Dom Young from the Newcastle Knights. If I had to pick my number one out of everyone on this list here, it probably would be a Cobbo, just based on the team that he's playing for and his position. Then it would be a toss-up between Stone Street and Ramian, and then probably Tamale. That's probably how I'd rank four of these guys if you're looking at shopping around this particular budget. Now, the final piece of the puzzle of the centre wing is the cheapies. So there wasn't really anyone in the 300s I thought that was worth talking about. So we'll wrap up this stream by looking at the cheapies. So you've got David Farley and set 2, the wingers from the Dragons, Makasini for the Tigers, Tom Chester for the Cowboys, and then, apologies, I don't even know how you pronounce this. Is it Fayamayani? Let me know in the chat how you pronounce that one, because I'm struggling. Just before I get onto these guys though, so Corey is asking, any love for Lofi Khan Pereira? Could be the DWZ of 2024. So yeah, Khan Pereira has moved to the Warriors, and he averaged last year 55 and then 52 the year before that. Now, is Khan Pereira, actually that's a good question now I think about it. Will Tuivasa-Sheck play one wing and then Khan Pereira the other? Or will they move Tuivasa-Sheck to centre? I'm just going to look at a New Zealand Warriors predicted lineup, just so I can help you out with that question. Because yeah, if he plays on the, he could be an option. What's his price? What is the price of Khan Pereira? This is the thing. It's so hard to consider all these players. 541k. That feels a little pricey. He's not a high work rate guy, so you do need attack from him to get the good scores. Like if you look at the scores from last year, like he'd just be, I think he'd frustrate me as an owner. 71, 14, 28, 83, 13, 14, 90. Then it's 89, 82, and 70. So he did have a good period towards the back end, but he was scoring doubles in each of those games. I'm just scared of those low games, and I just think, you know what, new team, how is he going to integrate? Yeah, he could frustrate the hell out of me, Khan Pereira. So probably not for me at 541k. Yeah, just I feel like he might be a bit of a roller coaster. But yeah, that's just me personally. On these cheapies here, I think one of David Farley or one of David Farley or Setu 2 should be an option for the Dragons. One of the wing spots I suspect will be Tuipulotu. There's some rumors going around that Tyrell Sloan is on the outer, and they're looking at one of these two rookies to take up the other wing spot. All I'll say is that you just kind of need to just wait and see in preseason. There's nothing really more that we can say about that, to be honest. So that's one of the things I'll say on the Dragons wingers. Farley looks more likely. He only had one game in 2025, and he averaged 50. Well, not average. He scored 50 points base power. So on face value with one game sample size, it looks like Farley's got a good floor. So he'd be a very, very good cheapie option, I think, to start with. That's why you can see he's 52% owned. Tom Chester looks like he's going to have one of the starting center spots for the Cowboys, with Purdue playing in the halves. So again, he's 216k. So look, good draw, no buys until round 13. Of course, there's always risks that these players can drop out once the season rolls around after a few games if performances don't work out. So that's always something you need to worry about with cheapie center wings. That's why I'm personally trying to look at a setup where I don't need to rely on any of these centers cheapies in my starting lineup. I want all of these cheapies to be on my bench. Now, if we end up with like 4 awesome cheapie centers, I'll pick 4 of them, But my ideal structure is just to have 3 of them, I think, potentially. So Tom Chester's currently in my team as well. Would be very popular given that he's more likely rumoured to have that one of the starting centre spots for the Cowboys. Makasini, whether he gets a spot or not, we're not sure yet because that depends on preseason. Taruva's locked in for one of the wing spots for the Tigers. So then it just depends on... you've got Starfatoa, you've got Skelton as well. So you've got a few other guys in the back line. Taylor May will play one of the centers. Actually, also remind me, we need to circle back to Taylor May. I didn't even talk about Taylor May in this video yet. So yeah, I think Makasini, his ownership's starting to go down a little bit because of the rumors on Fayamani from the Titans, because it looks like he's touted to get one of the starting wing spots with Campera leaving. So I think if he, at bottom dollar, gets a starting spot for the Titans, he'll be in everyone's team. The ownership at the moment is 13%. I think I pulled this morning. I'm tempted to see what it is currently, if it's maybe increased throughout the day. So at the moment, he is, he's 15% owned. So his ownership is increasing by the day. So I think you're going to find that he's going to be very popular. And Makasini, for example, he's at 42% on the table. On the actual website, he's 40% now. So his ownership's starting to go down a little bit as well. And then Setu 2, it just depends on whether him or Farley get a spot. That's really all the cheapy centre wings that we know of at the moment, reliably. So there's not really many more to talk about, but I think the good ones look like Farley, Chester, and Faimani. I think they're the 3 that I've got at the moment in my starting lineup. And then, they're probably going to be the ones that are very, very popular come round 1. My suspicion anyway. So we've actually basically hit just over an hour. So what I'll do is I'll leave maybe 5-10 minutes for questions. We can probably go until about 8:25, 8:30, just because I appreciate there's so many center wings that I haven't talked about. I'll quickly jump back to Taylor May because I completely forgot to talk about him as well. Now he's got the bye round 1, which isn't great, but he does have a really good draw round 2 to round 6. So I think if you're willing to sit him on the bench for round 1, I don't mind looking at Taylor May, or you can just wait till round 4 to maybe pick him up before price changes happen. I will say with Taylor May, I think he benefited a little bit from last year. So I do feel like his average of 70.1 may be slightly inflated, because if you remember, he came in later in the season to the Tigers. So I'm just going to quickly check when was his first game for them last year. It was in round 20. And I think he benefited from also it being the end of the year. So this is generally when attacking players do their best. And also, I think he had a relatively soft run of games in this period. So from round 20 to round 27, his opponents were the Titans, Penrith, Bulldogs, Manly, Cowboys, Canberra, Titans. And that Canberra team in 26, I think it was a full... So, Panthers, Bulldogs, and Canberra were tough. But then he had Titans twice, Cowboys, and Manly. So it was a pretty even split of draw, to be honest. But it was at the back end of the year. As you can see, what I've written down there, he scored 90 versus the Titans, 100 versus Manly, 123 versus the Cowboys. So part of me also thinks with Taylor May, did he just partly also benefit from coming into the team later in the season and getting to play some of these easier teams? Yes, he's versing easy teams, you'd say, on paper to start the year, but we know that attacking numbers are not as strong at the beginning of the year. And his base power average from last year, I didn't even get it. I haven't even put it on the screen here, have I? His base average was 30, so it wasn't bad. 27 evasive, so I'm gonna presume that his base power was pretty good from last year. Let's have a quick look and see what it was. Taylor May, 46. So a 46 base power average is very, very good. So the floor is good, but he has that round 1 bye, and part of my gut just partly thinks, did he benefit a bit from the back end of last year? So I think I'm going to leave Taylor May to start off with. But I don't really have any qualms about people starting with him just because the draw is good. And he's got the good floor, which, you've heard me this stream. I love the center wings who've got that really strong base power to start the year. So that is everyone who I wanted to talk about. I think I counted there was about 36 center wings. So yeah, if you've made it this far or you're watching back or listening back on audio, please do rate it 5-star. And also, please give the video a like. Even if you didn't like the video, just please like it for my poor soul who had to spend all this time putting all the numbers together. Because, look, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'll have a lot of fun with it, but it takes a lot of time. So let's get into some of your questions and we'll wrap up the stream there as well. But no, thank you everyone for tuning in. Appreciate there's Australian Open on and stuff like that as well. But yeah, no, it's good to be back in the preseason talking content. Schoolie Boy says the coming Tuesday is Teamsless Tuesday for week 1 of the trials. So yeah, so the preseason starts in a fortnight. So you might be right that the Teamless come out a week earlier than that. So yeah, it could be this time next week. So yeah, I think there's potential that the I think there's potential that the Teamless do come out next week. Tool Pro says Broncos have a dream opening. Any love for Katoni Staggs? So yeah, you'll notice that I didn't really talk about any of the Broncos backline players here. So no Dean Mariner, Shibasaki, or Katoni Staggs. So I think the reason for that was not many, because to be honest, I think because you'd put them all into this second category, right? The guns light. And I think what I was just trying to find in here was potentially players who offer some value. And I'm not sure if any of those guys offer value to start the year. Now, of course, it's a good Broncos team. They've got that good draw to start off with. You can't go wrong, basically. I think Katoni Staggs, Shibasaki, and Dean Mariner. Look, Katoni Staggs would probably be the one I'd be leaning towards. He averaged well last year with an average of 65. But most of his big scores came in the back end of the year. So I'm looking at his scores here from round 20 onwards. Katoni Staggs, 115, 45, 94, 108, 72, 32. If you compare to the early part of the season, 68, 34, 43, 75, 28, 43, 73, 58. There's a couple of good scores in the 70s, but more often there were scores in that kind of 40s, 50s. Part of me just thinks that that's what's going to be the case. And I feel like a lot of those Broncos players benefited in the back end of the year when Reece Walsh was going absolutely gun-ho. So, for example, if I look at Mariner, let's have a look at Mariner and see if we're seeing a similar thing. So if you look at Mariner between round 1 to 11, so there's 8 games in there, 56, 95, 27, 51, 25, 58, 19. So, and then 41 in round 13. So again, not biggest score there being 95, but a lot of down games. If you look from round 22 onwards, 101, 16, 61, 105, 51, 28. So again, there's still some low scores, but his 2 big scores came in the back end of the year. Shibasaki might be the exception because I know he started the season very well. And so 83, 34, 60, 116, 33, 52, 55, 63, 60, 40, 96. Then back end of the year was 3 scores in the 40s, then 80, 75, 109. Basically what I'm just seeing is that you're going to see some fluctuation in these guys' scores. It'll be hard to pick which of them you want to start with because they're all going to be priced similar as well. Look, if I had to pick any of them, Staggs has burnt me in the past, so I think I have to let that go, and I'd probably still say Staggs would be the option I'd pick to start the year with, given the Broncos have got a good draw. But me personally, I'm not really looking at them. Again, I feel like it's similar with Melbourne, where if they've got a good draw, the players I want to pick are the spine players. So for Broncos, your Reece Walsh, maybe a half, maybe a Payne Haas, maybe one backline player. For Melbourne, it's Grant, it's Munster, it's the fullback. It's not as necessary. It's not really the backs like the centers and the wingers that I'm looking at as much when it comes to these kind of teams. Nice show, man. Thank you very much. Lachlan says, I think Staggs deserves Origin this year. Yeah, there's a lot of good centres though for New South Wales. Rumours were that Marzu's moving to the edge for Sharp to take his wing spot. Is that the edges in the back row? Or am I reading that wrong? I've never seen Marzu play anywhere but on the wing, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what where he ends up playing. Let's look at the Newcastle Knights predicted lineup because I have not had a look at this actually. NRL.com is saying, NRL.com is putting Fletcher Sharp in the halves and Sanders Smith on the bench, but it seems as though we're more likely hearing Sanders Smith in the halves. So let's have a look at another predicted lineup. Let's just have a look here. Yeah, another predicted lineup also has Fletcher Sharp in the halves and Marzu on the wings. So I think, again, it's one of those ones where people aren't really too sure. Some rumours going around that Fletcher Sharp will be on the wing, but we just don't know yet. So I think it kind of just remains to be seen. Kodum says, if you're playing Karazaman, is starting one of the cheapies round 2 doable? Yeah, this is, of course, one of the things that you'll have to think about. So Karaz will be on the bye in round 2. So let's assume you have a centre wing setup of Karaz, Latrell, To'o, call it Stone Street. So let's see. Stone Street will be fine because he's got the Panthers, but you'll have to play him anyway. Who do the Dragons have in round 2? The Dragons have got, assuming you have David Farley's got Melbourne. The Titans have got the Dolphins. So if that guy comes in for the wing spot for the Titans, you can play him off the bench. He's got the Dolphins. That's not terrible. If you've got Tom Chester, he's got the West Tigers. So I think 2 out of those 3 cheapies look like they're going to have decent enough games where, maybe for a week you can hide Karaz and then you've just got Karaz set and forget. So actually looking at that gives me maybe a little bit more confidence to start off with Karaz, given that you've got at least hopefully 2 cheapies who've got decent games in round 2. Let's see if there's any other questions coming in. Let's see. I'm just going to scroll back up, see if I missed anything. Yeah, Schooly Boy makes a good point here on Ramian as well, is that for a lot of those games, he didn't have Sione Katoa. What I'll try to do for you live, since I've got maybe a little bit of time, I'm going to whip up my spreadsheet. I'm going to see, when did Sione Katoa miss last year for the Sharkies? So Katoa was out until round 14. Okay, so let's put Sione Katoa in from round 14. And then, he played every game after that. Okay, so let's put Sione Katoa in for the remainder of the season. Let's look at what was Ramian's average with Sione Katoa and without. So his average, this is what I do at home when I'm bored. Just do all these averages with and without guys. So his average with Sione Katoa last year was 53.4. Not really too different to his average in 80 minutes of 53.6. His average without, and I'll exclude that one 14-minute game that he had, 53.7. Sorry, Schooly Boy. Doesn't look like Sione Katoa makes a difference for Jesse Raymond. His average is basically the same. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it matters a lot. Sorry, mate. Gonna have to burst your bubble a bit. Knights with 13-day games in a row is definitely good for the ceiling. Yeah, I heard the boys on Insight actually mention this, that the Knights have got lots of day games. So again, this is another thing to consider, which I probably don't pay enough attention to, which I should, is the number of day games, because day games are generally always better for attacking players. So something to think about. Maybe that's why someone like a Dom Young is a bit more interesting for guys out there. If Marzu, honestly, if Marzu is playing on the wing, I wouldn't mind him at 611k. We know that he's a gun of the past. He just had a bit of a down year. His base power average is insane. He just needs some attack. And so if he's got a left edge of him, Bradman, and we know that him and Bradman Best actually work very well together. Last year was just a bit of a weird year with the Knights, and of course Ponga was injured for a lot of it too. But new halves combination with Dylan Brown coming in there, maybe that team does have a turnaround. So I would actually prefer Marzu to be starting on the edge, because I think I'd be very tempted by him to start off with, because I like that price, 611. He's almost like a Kale Iro light. One of those. He's got a very, very high work rate. He doesn't have an early buy as well from memory, at least not in rounds 1 to 6. So, for example, if Marzu gets a start, I'd be tempted to go Karaz, Marzu, Latrell, To'o as my starting 4 centers. I could see myself doing that. As you said, to your point, lots of day games would definitely help things for the Knights. Thoughts on Alex Johnson? I did talk about Johnson a little bit earlier, SC Warrior. Overall, not too keen, just because I feel like you need him to be in a fully functioning, firing Rabbitohs attack. Whether we see that from round 1 or not remains to be seen. Given that he's pretty expensive at 650 and low floor, I'm happy to wait and see with him. Alright guys, it is 8:32. That Aussie Open game has probably started, and I do want to catch that as well. So I will probably wrap up the stream there. We've been going for an hour 15, so pretty lengthy, but thank you everyone for tuning in. Really, really appreciated your support during the stream. Again, please do give it a like if you enjoyed it. A lot of work went into this one, so hopefully you all did enjoy it. As I said, the goal is to get to 6,000 subscribers by the start of the season. So please subscribe if you are new around here as well. And go follow me on Instagram, X, and you do check out the Patreon as well. You can try it for a month, and if you don't like it, you can always cancel as well. It's only $8 a month, so you get me a couple of coffees a month basically by joining the Patreon is how I look at it. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it. We'll catch you all in the next one.